What up, cucks? And as part of the hater reboot, I decided to do a quick video on how to improve AEW. Now, how to improve AEW is also, you can also think of that as how to improve any wrestling company, really. So, the first thing that needs to happen is AEW or TNA or whatever small level company we're talking about here. Let's take the AEW. They need to find several big time stars that could one day become bigger time stars, right? Now, that's a problem because in AEW there are 0 stars. But there are a few stars in there somewhere, right? Some smaller level stars or poorly booked stars. And then we have a lot of potential stars. Now, the way you pick these stars, obviously, has to do with which ones you think are going to be the most profitable, right? The categories are as follows. They got some legends. They got Jericho. Jericho can still go, and Jericho can still draw, right? It's really that simple. Then they got these pseudo-stars. John Moxley, Daniel Bryan, in my opinion, Pac, not Adam Cole. Adam Cole's a jobber. He's need to be fired, right? And Wardlow, fucking the guy who thinks he's Wolverine. Brian Cage, Powerhouse Hobbs. There's a few here and there. Nick Camarado, if he's still in there. They got a few, right? They got a few people that have the potential to do something with their fucking lives and their fucking careers, right? You can even throw in Sami Zayn in there. There's a few wrestlers here and there. Not Sami Zayn, Sammy Guevara. Shit, I haven't watched AEW in so long. There's a few of these guys, even MJF, right? There's a few of these guys that have some credibility here, right? And the idea is this. You now take these guys and you tell them, look, if this company's going to fucking work, you can't show up once every 3 weeks. You have to wrestle every week. I'm sorry. You have to wrestle every week. If you don't want to, there's the door. Simple as that. Sorry, we're going to cut you. We'll pay you for the rest of your contract or whatever. We're going to cut you. And if that happens, then Tony Khan or whoever the fuck's in charge needs to go to the indies and find badasses that are willing to wrestle every week. They're not that hard to find. Now, Powerhouse Hobbs is probably my favorite guy in AEW, or one of them at least, right? But Powerhouse Hobbs is a dime a dozen. The problem is they don't get people like him, but he's a dime a dozen, right? There's nothing that special about him. He's a big guy who's strong. You can find, I went to an independent wrestling show, and I saw this guy, I forget his name. But in that show, there was a lot of people that were tiny, right? And there were some dudes that were big. They were big motherfucks, right? They looked like bosses, right? They looked like huge, right? Because afterwards in the independent wrestling shows, the wrestlers walk around, right? And you see them, you can size them up. Some of them don't look as big as they did in the ring, but a lot of them were big motherfuckers, right? So it's oh shit, you can just take one of those guys, right? They don't lack any skills compared to Powerhouse Hobbs, right? He's on that level, really. So, or Wardlow or anybody else, because wrestling's not real. So you take some of these guys, right? They don't have to all be big, but there should be a lot of big ones, right? And you have them wrestle each other in short matches, right? This way, the probability of getting injured is very small, and the probability of getting over is very high, right? So imagine if in the last, 1 year, right? Imagine if in the last 1 year, Brian Cage just came out, there was just a 5-minute segment every Wednesday dedicated to Brian Cage, right? At some point after a commercial break, Brian Cage would just be in the ring, and he would have a Ryback-style squash match, right? Or something squash match adjacent, right? And without any explanation, every week you just had Brian Cage do this, right? Imagine how much higher on the card Brian Cage would be with just a 5-minute investment. You could feed him fucking, what's his name, Fuego del Sol every week if you want. It doesn't matter, right? But if you had that guy just accruing wins on Dynamite for 5 minutes, that's all you need. 5 minutes of TV time, right? You can, instead of having, those little vignettes where they're next week on Dynamite, it's going to be this jobber versus this jobber. And then the return of this jobber versus that jobber. Instead of that, just have a 5-minute match with Brian Cage, right? At any given point, 1 year, 2 years later, who cares? At any given point, you can just take Brian Cage and make him into a big star, right? You can have him beat everybody for a year or two, in 5 minutes, and you can make him into a big star. It's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight, right? But consistency is the most important thing that AEW needs to change, right? When Cucky Rhodes was doing the Cucky Rhodes TV title challenge, and every week it was Cucky Rhodes versus some guy with a cowboy gimmick. Oh, it's Cucky Rhodes versus Warhorse. It's Cucky Rhodes versus douchebag McGillicuddy, right? It's who gives a shit? It's Cucky Rhodes versus a new guy every week, and it's like a complete waste of a segment, right? You know, you waste your time with people cutting shit promos. Have a match that puts someone over, right? Like, Adam Cole doesn't need to cut any promos. He doesn't say anything. Samoa Joe should never have a mic in his hand. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're wasting your TV time with this bullshit, right? If you had something good, right? Like, I'll give you a great example. Back when, like, Bobby Lashley first debuted, that's kind of how they debuted him. I think it was on Raw, right? He would just show up, and he was just Bobby Lashley. He would have these throwaway matches where you would just beat somebody senseless, right? An idea spoke for itself. You look at Lashley, you look at Brian Cage, and you're like, okay, I understand exactly why these guys are going to win everything, right? Because they're not jobbers. So that's how that goes, cucks. But instead, they keep, like, teasing new reveals, new factions. The champion is Samoa Joe, which is stupid. Then you've got fucking, what's his face? Isaiah Swerve Scott, who has, like, a stable that he's never with. There's a bunch of bullshit going on in that company, right? You need to kind of throw away everything and start anew. Not completely from scratch, right? But things need to be followed through with, right? So, for example, a great example would be like the Inner Circle, right? Jericho is now feuding with Hook. He's in a storyline with Hook, and literally everyone else in the Inner Circle is either released or is just getting paid to do nothing, right? Nobody shows up anymore. You know what I mean? Same thing with the Jericho Appreciation Society, right? Which is basically the same thing, except those two, like Matt Menard and the other guy, Angelo Parker, right? Those guys were never going to make it, and they didn't make it in this one either. But the point is, you need consistency. So that leads me to step 2, the most important step, arguably. Exclusive contracts. If you wrestle for AEW, you should not be appearing in CMLL or AAA or fucking Evolve or any other bullshit lesser company, right? I don't need my guy to be gone for 2 weeks because he has to go defend, like, you know, the transatlantic, you know, like, Indonesian middleweight title in, like, the Jakarta Wrestling League. You know, no. You need to be there 100% of the time. Like, a great example would be Pac. Pac gets, like, $2 million, like, a year from AEW. And he wrestles about 2 matches a year. Like, Death Triangle has been a thing for, like, 4 years, and they've done fucking nothing. Like, they might as well not exist. The fact that there's something called Death Triangle changes absolutely nothing in this company. So you see what I'm saying? We need to change things up so that they make sense. And the way to do that is exclusive contracts. I don't give a shit. If Penta El Cero Miedo wants to be Pentagon Obscuro in, like, you know, Lucha Libre Underground 3, right? He can go fuck himself and be Penta Obscuro. He can go be Penta Cabron. I don't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? But the point is, he cannot be Pentagon Jr. in, in AEW. That's not going to cut it. That's not how it's going to work, cucks. It needs to make sense. It needs to make sense within the context of AEW. The fact is, the AEW roster, right, is completely fluctuates, and nobody's there for long enough to actually get over and to make a difference, right? They've had some people that they've dropped the ball with. Jade Cargill, fucking Lexus King, Brian Pillman Jr., right? The other guy. And also, the third thing that AEW needs to do is they need to get rid of ROH, like, immediately. ROH is not getting it done. Just fuse the two brands. Mark Briscoe, who I love, is now the ROH heavyweight champion, and he needs to go to AEW and be a serious contender. He needs to go there as the ROH champion and go beat up Samoa Joe. That's what needs to happen. And if that ain't happening, then I don't know what to tell you, cucks. You know, you've just lost your way completely. People like Eddie Kingston should never be getting pushed. You need to push people that are actually have the capacity to be stars, right? The tag team division, which for a while was AEW's strong suit, there's plenty of tag teams that are interesting enough to get a small push. I'm talking about fucking Butcher and Blade, right? Not to say that they're like this great tag team, but, you know, they're more interesting than fucking Private Party. They're more interesting than, like, those, you know, Top Flight. They're more interesting than these generic jobber-ass tag teams, right? They got, like, a big dude with muscles who looks like the Monopoly Man, and they got the very, very jacked other guy whose name I forget. The truth is, cucks, there are some talented wrestlers in AEW, but they don't push them, right? Like, the fact that after Brody Lee died, rest in peace, the fact that after that happened, the Dark Order basically became meaningless is stupid. One of those guys should have gotten a push, right? There's that one guy, Preston Vance, whatever the fuck his name is, I don't know what he's doing now, but the fact is, this guy was in AEW, and this guy was huge, and he could have had a push. Lance Archer is a great example. Lance Archer debuted. To me, that was the height of AEW. When Lance Archer debuted with Jake the Snake, and Jake the Snake cut that promo on Cody, I was like, shit, it's getting real now, right? Because Jake the Snake's promo skills were peak. They're still good, right? And he said all that shit, and he's like, I don't respect you, Cody, and he turned his back on him. And then you're like, fuck. Now it's going to be Cookie Rhodes versus fucking Lance Archer. You know what I mean? Like, Lance Archer is a big deal. Lance Archer is fucking Lance Archer. You know what I mean? He's a big motherfucker, and he's unique looking, and he's got a lot going for him. So as a result, I would have allowed Lance Archer to get a push, but who am I? Who am I to say these things, right? Why push Lance Archer when maybe Swerve Strickland can be a star, which is never going to fucking happen. That being said, motherfuckers, that's how I would fix AEW. Focus on one show, focus on a handful of wrestlers and push them correctly, and more importantly, get rid of ROH and have exclusivity contracts. Exclusive contracts are the bread and butter of a successful company. You can imagine a scenario where, let's say, Pat Mahomes decides, you know what, I want to be in AEW, right? And then the NFL's going to be like, here's what's going to happen instead. You're going to shut the fuck up, and you're going to report here for training camp when you're told to report here for training camp. You're going to throw the ball around, and you're going to go win us a Super Bowl. And if you ever have any aspirations to go be an AEW wrestler, once your contract is up, you can go fuck your mother. We'll bury you completely, right? Probably not. They probably offer him a lot more money. But the truth is that that's how that's going to go, right? You don't get to do whatever the fuck you want because Pat Mahomes has an exclusive contract with the Chiefs. He can't go and be a wrestler. Pat Mahomes cannot decide, it looks like Baltimore needs a quarterback. I think I'm going to go play with them for 1 week. No, that's how it works. You are exclusive to the Chiefs. You belong to them. Same thing with many other employees in many other companies. You can't just go wandering around. But because Tony Khan has a long leash on his wrestlers, you see things like Pac going away for like 6 months at a time, right? Earning like $20K like here and there probably in England, right? Which, hey, $20K, no one's faulting you for. You're getting $2 million from AEW. No loyalty to them whatsoever, right? Or maybe they don't have anything for him. But it's a waste of money then, you know? And I think that's what it comes down to fundamentally, is managing the resources. You know, AEW is not good at managing resources. They don't understand. Like, Tony Khan doesn't have the capacity to value things properly. Like, he thinks, like he should hire me. He should hire me as the fucking human abacus for that fucking shithole company. He should be like, hey, hater, let me ask you a question. I say, yeah, Tony, what's up? He'd be like, oh, how much money do you think we should pay for Mercedes Moné? I'd say, how much money did you not want to pay for Jade Cargill? He'd be like, well, we didn't want to do this and that. I'd be like, okay, here's how it's going to go. Call Jade Cargill up before she signs with WWE. Fire and don't even think about Mercedes Moné ever again. And pay Jade Cargill everything you would have paid Mercedes Moné and what she was making, right? And turn her into a star. I would be the human abacus. I would tell Tony Khan, I'd say, Tony, look, cuck, all right? Let me tell it to you like it is, douchebag. These people that you're paying are never going to draw a dime. You know, why did you let Hammerstone get away and get signed by TNA so you could sign Okada, who has literally never drawn a dime in his life? I bet you the viewership of New Japan is exactly the same now that Okada's gone. Nobody gives a fuck. With that being said, cucks, fix AEW, fix TNA, listen to the hater, motherfucks. Human abacus up in this bitch.